What's up, Starcraft fans? Today we're doing the tier list for Inner Power on Temple of the Past. Brian, let's hear the mutation.
Temple of the Past is the map where we have to protect a temple in the center of the map from waves of enemy units. If the temple survives until the end of the game, we win. If the enemies destroy the temple, we lose. Enemies spawn doodlings upon death. All enemies, including the doodlings, have energy and can use spells. There is no means to determine the spell until it is used.
We have Edwin and Joni in the call with us today. How are you guys?
Doing
Very
well.
well.
All right. That makes three of us. I'm also doing well. Thank you for asking. So, Joni, how do we rank the commanders this week?
So, buildings do well. Power overwhelming in particular can have pretty devastating, albeit slightly random effects on like massed up armies, etc. It's worth noting up front that the Broodlings spawned from Alien Incubation also benefit from power overwhelming. So not only are you going to be sort of bombarded by units, but you're also going to be bombarded by units which have a variety of sort of random spellcasting abilities too. So being able to sort of deal with the mass of units in and of itself and also be resilient to whatever spells are chucked your way, basically will make a commander ranked higher. So that's kind of how I viewed it.
All right. What do you think, Edwin?
There's only really one mutator here, in that it's power overwhelming. Alien Incubation only comes into play in terms of the fact that Broodlings also have power overwhelming. Other than that, they're not particularly dangerous at all. So if you are resilient against power overwhelming, you do pretty well. So yeah, buildings in general are pretty good. And yeah, that's about it.
All right. Let's begin. Abathur, where do we have him?
Abathur has Temple of the Past problems with his initial biomass farming, so that hurts him a little bit in the early game. I think once he gets set up, he's not bad at all. He has relatively tanky units, and he has swarm hosts, which if you have, like we've talked about, you have them targeted out onto a toxic nest out away, so you make sure that your swarm hosts never get involved in the fight, then you should be fine. Obviously, if they get hit by power overwhelming, things could turn a little sour, but they're relatively tanky as well, so one storm or something isn't going to kill them outright, especially with Mend out there. That said, early game does suck. Getting set up sucks quite a bit for him, and you do have to defend multiple angles, so it can be a little tough to get out enough swarm hosts to defend against some of the triple waves and whatnot, but if you do that, I think you should be fine. All that said, I had him in C tier.
C tier. What do you think, Joni?
Interesting. I was slightly more optimistic about Abathur's chances this week, albeit not using dissimilar strategies. Completely agree that early farming is not the easiest. Having said that, because you are playing specifically down one lane at the start of the game, toxic nests on their own and letting the enemies come to you can compensate for an awful lot of that, particularly if you're kind of quite fortunate and don't pull a very, very heavy air comp straight off the bat. My personal view is that playing P2, swarm hosts have the mobility to enable them to effectively defend multiple lanes at the same time using the same clump of swarm hosts. And I think that particularly when they get powered up, the locusts are tanky enough in and of themselves that actually they are able to deal with power overwhelming, the broodling spawn, etc., and allowing the swarm hosts to be able to sort of move around, dealing with multiple waves as and if required. That is obviously not to mention when you get your ultimates out, they have significant resilience themselves. So I was a bit more optimistic about Abathur, actually. I felt that once you're up and running, he's going to have quite a good time. I initially had Abathur in A tier.
What do you think about A tier, Edwin?
I think B tier would be fine. You can just rush out the 3 swarm host build in the early game, so that's okay. If it is an air comp, though, then toxic nests aren't helping as much. I do think one other thing I meant to mention, you can camp the spawn points if you push that far out. You can camp the spawn points with your toxic nest to kind of get some initial clearing done before you even have to engage with your army, which is good. But again, if it's air, then that's, your toxic nests aren't as useful. And yeah, I just think he's not as resilient as some of the A and S tiers I have, so I'd probably say B.
What do you think about B
tier?
Yeah,
I'm pretty happy to compromise on B tier. I must admit that I have made an assumption upon making this tier list that if you are a player who is looking to sort of carry, like heavily carry, you are going to have knowledge of like where enemy waves spawn when. So I kind of have an underlying assumption with my tiering that spawn camping potentially with, armies, if not toxic nests and such, is something that you're going to be capable of doing. So I guess for my rankings, if you're not at that stage, possibly bump some of these commanders down a tier. But I'm happy with B tier for Abathur.
Alright, so funny story. The last tier list I believe had Abathur in D. Edmono had him initially in C. Joni had him initially in A. I had him initially in B. And turns out, that's where we land. Because I did play Abathur recently. And my experience was, if you can navigate the early game and not be behind, you will have a jolly old time because the Swarm host will just intercept everything. I did not go for a single Brutalisk, or at least I tried not to go for, because the trickiest thing is when you're managing timings, locations, macro, and all that, you sometimes forget to switch off the autocast on the Morph to Brutalisk. And what's happening? Why is my Brutalist, or why is my Swarmhost turned to a Brutalist? That is honestly the most irritating part of my run. But if you are able to get the quick enough Swarmhost, and for air, as you mentioned, Edmund, for air, if you're able to get the overdudes between the enemy unit and the temple, you will be able to absorb some of the hits. All of the hits, if you have the anti-air research on your Swarmhosts with a full biomass, full building speed mastery setup, you will be able to get those in time. I did. So I actually had him in B star. So, but you guys both have him in B, so I guess B is fine. Very fine for me. Prestige wise, second one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do really need that extra mobility on this map.
I put the star because it's really tricky to manage all those things going on, including the layering. What I actually had to do is layer my toxic nests so that I have a layer of toxic nests in front to catch the actual units, and a layer of toxic nests behind to catch the doodlings so that they don't break the rocks, which would buy me so much more time to get to my Swarmhost. It's really good if you can manage it. But yes, let's move on. Alarak, where do we have him?
So Alarak has the Alarak problem this week that his army is a bit of a glass cannon. It's compounded by the fact that a really significant aspect of Alarak's playstyle is basically destroying stuff at range before it gets within sort of contact distance of his units. Broodlings with power overwhelming really, really significantly complicate that, not to mention the effects of power overwhelming in and of itself. So what you basically end up having to do is playing a strategy that relies entirely on zoning with Alarak, and effectively desperately hoping that you don't get bad power overwhelming sort of RNG before you're able to deal with it, because losing units for Alarak is significantly problematic. He does have some useful-ish tools in the sense of void prisms or war prisms or whatever his are called, which can sit in dead ground and use overcharge to sorry, not overcharge, you know what I mean.
It is overcharge.
It is overcharge, isn't it? Yeah. I was thinking lights for some reason, but there you go. Sitting them in dead ground, they will contribute to the fight. But the reality to it is, I found playing Alarak this week to be incredibly mechanically stressful. And to the extent that I just piled in, basically. So I had Alarak in D tier. I didn't really rank him particularly highly.
What do you think about D tier at Benham?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be a bit of a struggle bus. You can't really go for destroyers because they're way too fragile. Ascendants, if you can get them powered up, would probably be fine, but getting them to that point is going to be tough. And then Wrathwalkers as well. It's just, if he could get set up, I think he'd do well, but it's just going to be nigh impossible to get set up. So I had him in D tier as well.
All right, both of you had Alarak in D tier. Let's put Alarak in D tier. If you can, if you are a macro master, you can maybe set your Ascendants far back enough behind. But as the guys have mentioned, the spells really, Amon really in general really likes to target high spellcaster units like Ascendants. That's why it's really tough to keep them behind. And while they're still behind, you have trouble maintaining the front with just Alarak and the overcharge, and maybe even the mothership. But anyway, Alarak goes in D tier. No prestige recommendation because D tiers are considered bad. Let's move on. Arcturus, where do we have him?
Yes, Arcturus is pretty good, I would say. He has bunkers, which are nice. He has earth splitters, which also have Contaminated Strike. So as long as you're perfect with your Contaminated Strikes, this is basically free week. Most people aren't, so it's not free week, I would say. But, there is that theoretical possibility of just shutting down the waves and never actually having to fight them at all, which is great. The rest of it, yeah, I mean, I think it'll be okay. Your biggest issue is probably getting out to kill the Void Thrashers amidst the waves, because it's a little harder to rely on bunkers for that. But you have things like Dogs of War and Nuclear Annihilation and ESOs for that. So it shouldn't be too difficult. I had him in A tier.
What do you think about A tier, Joni?
I had him in S tier, actually. I felt that his ability to bunker up, repair, he's got the range of different armaments for troopers. So when you're playing that with P3 in particular, you do have decent defense against both sort of alien incubation and anything else that Amon's going to throw at you. And not completely free, but in reality, sort of no one is completely free this week. But I kind of felt that Arcturus was getting close to sort of as good as it gets. I felt that with this map in general terms, I don't feel there is much to be gained from bunkering up on ramps. And actually, if you're bunkering up where the Void Thrashers are going to spawn instead, then you kind of have that advantage of just being in place anyway, taking full advantage of bunker drops, trooper drops, etc. And then, yeah, exactly as ET said, sort of clearing lanes with Dogs of War is my personal preference. But yeah, I kind of felt that Arcturus actually has a pretty decent time this week. Absolutely appreciating there are some mechanical complexities to, getting your trooper combination correct in the bunkers and such. But
what do you think about S tier at Penhome?
I would say, at least in my opinion, Arcturus has the theoretical ability to repair, but in reality, you're going to lose anything outside of the bunkers to Irradiate, to Fungal, to Storm, to Psionic Orb, and then you're not going to have repair. Whereas the S tiers I have, of which there's only 2, and there's only 4 A tiers, so he's still very high up being an A tier, to be clear. The other bunker up, cannon up, whatever you want to call it, they have auto repair on their stuff where there is no units that can get fungled and whatnot, or similar mechanics to that, where Arcturus, you are relying on that. So I had him lower because of that. Again, I mean, there is the theoretical, in theory, Contaminated Strike just shuts down the entire map, but I don't think that's super realistic for basically anyone. It's sort of like, Raynor with where it's like, well, technically if it was Lila, I'd put Raynor 4 tiers up from wherever I'm putting him, but we're not talking about Lila. So yeah, I would still say A. If you really think S, I'm okay with that, I guess, but I do think the repair thing is you're probably not actually doing much repairing.
Let's have a rule, okay? If we're saying that we're not gonna put someone in S, but we're gonna put them in A, let's have a rule that says let's have a rule that says we're not allowed to say we're putting him lower. We'll just have a rule that says we're putting him less high, because A and S are really high. When we say
that's true,
when we say putting it lower, it sounds like A is a low. It's not. A is really good. Oh my Donnie.
No, I can see this, and I totally appreciate that as well. You are going to be particularly resource stretched if you're being asked to carry, particularly sort of post first Thrasher, if you're getting both lanes at once. So yeah, look, I'm completely happy with A tier. He's still strong, like CTG's just said. A tier is still really good. And yeah, I also totally agree that there are commanders that are better than him this week. So A tier is fine.
All right. A tier is where we end up after all. And even if we don't agree, because S tier yet requires a unanimous agreement, and it's not unanimous, therefore it's not S. Therefore it's A, which is still really good, by the way. Let me just clarify that. Oh, by the way, A tier is really good. Moving on, Artanis, where do we have him?
So moving on to a commander who is not really good, or even good. Yeah, Artanis is really on the pain train this week, despite that not being this map. His best option is Storm, pretty much, as far as I saw it. And he is going to need to be using all of the tools at his disposal, which are limited, but Space Archon drops, Walls of Sacrificial Zealots in front of Templar, etc. Yeah, but the reality to it is getting critical mass out to enable him to sort of do all of that without just his army shrinking in size over a period of time is going to be incredibly hard. So I really didn't sort of rate Artanis' chances this week. I had him in E tier.
E tier. What do you think about E tier at home?
I had him in D tier. I don't think he's quite E because he does have a relatively good amount of tanking with shield overcharge, and the space archons are not useless by any stretch of the imagination, because even if they get disruption webbed or blinding clouded or whatever, they're still shooting off fireballs and dealing damage, so they're pretty good, and the initial damage of the orbital strike. And what are they called? Dragoons are decently tanky on their own, and they do have good healing. So I didn't think he was as bad as the folks I have in E tier, so I only had him in D.
Whoa, multiple folks in E tier. Am I hearing that right? My Donnie. What do you think
More
about
than one.
What do you think about D tier, Joni?
So my problem with Dragoons is that not only do they do a really significant amount of overkill, particularly on stuff like Broodlings, but they're also very, very vulnerable to being closed in on. My sort of concern with it was that he doesn't deal with alien incubation actually very well at all. And when you throw power overwhelming Broodlings into the mix, I think particularly when you're looking to ramp, he's just not going to be able to get an army up properly. And whilst I absolutely agree that Space Archons are great and will do a lot of carrying in the early game, I'm not convinced they're enough to provide the level of crowd control that his army requires. Look, I'm not not going to split hairs over D&E. He is basically pretty terrible, but I'm sort of happy with D tier. I don't think he's as bad as Alarak. I think he's worse than Alarak is what I mean to say. But happy to have him coexisting in the same tier.
Epinham, are you convinced by D tier?
Yes, I'm convinced.
Or rather
by
E tier. Yeah, sorry.
I think for me it's always a little bit like, exactly what each tier means changes a little bit sort of constantly, I feel like, but E tier is like you're basically doing nothing, but you're not actively kind of hurting the situation, where F tier is like you're kind of actively a detriment, right? And for that reason, it's like, well, Artanis, just the solar bombardment alone is enough to take out like a few significant big waves throughout, avoid Thrasher and a wave. And shield overcharge, even if it's not that helpful for you, is going to be pretty helpful for your ally if you cast it on them. And Space Archons, it's like just alone, his top bars are going to do a pretty good amount of work. Whereas Alarak's top bars, the only one that's doing any super helpful work is Pylon Overcharge or Structure Overcharge.
Don't use
So I think on that front, it's kind of the same thing. And I actually think his army is going to do more than Alarak's army is on average, because you don't have those like glass cannons. Dragoons are not going to do a great job by any means, but they're slow, consistent damage. You have a few at each quadrant, so you're not doing as much overkill. And then for the Broodlings, once you're mainly fighting Broodlings, you just warp in a few zealots, they spin, they die, but they kill the Broodlings. I'm not saying he's better than Alarak necessarily, but I think he's pretty on par.
Or you can just use shield overcharge and not lose the zealots in the first place. Also,
That's true.
Do not use solar bombardment on just the Thrasher. Thrasher and something else. Don't use it on just the Thrasher.
Especially the last two Thrashers. There's the Thrashers and an attack wave.
Yes,
so
that's a good one.
That's more what I was referring to.
That's a good use of it.
The big hybrid wave, like the first big hybrid wave, probably the triple, and then that as well. I think it maybe times out.
Are you convinced by D tier, Joni?
I remain unconvinced about the lack of fragility within his army, but I'm happy with D tier.
All right, let's put Artanis in D tier.
Minsk, I think he's pretty solid. I don't think he's quite S tier because he doesn't have like top tier static defense or anything, but you do have top tier pack leaders, which do quite well. I think you probably still want to go P2 because you get more pack leaders that way and they're stronger, even if you only get them one at a time. You can also then go for
Brontosaurus?
Primal Host.
Primal Host.
Creeper Host. Okay. Creeper Host. My brain's not fully on today. You can go for Creeper Hosts, and those will do pretty well as well. You probably want to kind of try to split the Creepers up a little bit as you're using them so that they aren't just getting Psionic Orbed and stormed to death before they make it to their targets, but they'll do well. They'll do well against the Thrashers as well. And Dehaka himself does decently well. You'll probably be getting abducted around a good bit, but you can still get some stuff done. In theory, you get abducted into the middle of the army and then eat a psionic guy, So it's almost a help when you get abducted.
Almost.
So that said, I don't think he's quite S tier, but I do think he's pretty good. I had him in A.
What do you think about A tier, Joni?
Yeah, I had him in A as well for basically exactly the same reasons. He is very good. He's not quite S. Pack leaders will be doing a lot of work this either some guardians or some, lurkers into the mix, potentially to provide a bit of a front stop to your creeper hosts. I think it is, despite the fact the enemy will need some detection to deal with them once they're burrowed. Bearing all of that in mind, still not outrageously mechanically different. And like I said, the pack leaders are going to do a huge amount of work. So yeah, happy with A tier.
All right, A tier for Dehaka. Prestige-wise, second one.
I'd say second one, yeah.
Moving
Just
on.
remember, guys, you can recall the pack leaders on P2. So do that if you need to.
Fenix, where do we have him?
So Fenix is good in the respect that he's got some pretty tanky champions which are relatively easily replaceable, particularly when you're playing P2. So you can, to a certain extent, particularly with the likes of Caldalis, etc., you can fire and forget to a certain extent. He will also get a huge amount of work done against Broodlings, which is great. None of them are completely immune to sort of the effects of power overwhelming, obviously, but I think that due to sort of aforementioned reasons of replaceability, he probably deals with it slightly better than an Alarak, for example. That's without mentioning the fact that the Phoenix suits themselves will certainly help you out in a pinch. So I thought Phoenix was not terrible this week. I had him in B tier.
B tier. What do you think about B tier?
I thought he was terrible. I think I had him in D. I think the problem is if you go P2, when you get to the point where you're having triple waves of hybrid come from every direction, you don't have the firepower because you only have your 7 champions. Your shell farm is basically completely useless. It's like a Han and Horner army at that point. And then the champions are good, but if you have to defend from 3 angles or even 2 angles, really, I just don't think you have enough time. I guess you could like call in the Arbiter suit and freeze one of the waves and then freeze it again when it unfreezes or something like that. But yeah, I don't think I think it's pretty bad. I could see C tier, I guess, but I really don't think he's B just because you just don't have enough multi-pronged defense if you're P2. And then if you're P anything else, then I don't think you have enough strength to kind of push through.
You really can't wait to roast Todd and Horror, can you?
Well,
What do you think
gotta
about
be
that?
honest.
I don't think he is the least mobile of commanders. So, if you are really, really having to hard carry, then yeah, with all 3, he's certainly going to be in a bit of a pickle. I'm very, very happy to compromise on C tier. I really do think that he is a tier above Alarak and Artanis this week. So very, very happy with C tier.
All right, C tier for Phoenix. Prestige-wise, second one?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yes.
All right. Moving on, Han and Horner. Let's roast them.
Yeah, Han and Horner is just so good this week. S tier for sure. No, I think they're
All right.
I think they're really, really bad. I think the problem is just everything they have. The only good they have is bombing platforms, realistically. Their main army, the Han army dies, the Horner army gets abducted and dies and is really expensive. So the only real benefits you have are your top bars and the salvage for your ally, assuming they need it. Beyond that, I don't think they're doing really anything. I don't think they're actively helping the enemy. So I'm not putting them in F, but I am putting them in E.
What do you think, Johnny?
I reverted back to my logic of if you knowingly pick Han and Horner over the gamut of other commanders that are available to you, are you as a commander actively helping Amon by not picking someone better? So I was sort of using my slightly spurious logic there to put them in F tier, because I think they are genuinely that bad. I agree with everything ET said, except for the fact that I actually think even the bombing platforms this week are, by the time they really come useful, which is effectively napalming Broodlings to keep them off your army, they are already like in range of your army by that point, due to the fact that other than that you're hitting healthier mass with the bombing platforms, not the Broodlings. So yeah, I really couldn't see a redeeming feature of them like whatsoever. So I had them in F tier. I'm sort of happy with E in the sense I'm very conscious that mine was a slightly spurious F tier there, but yeah, they're bad.
Well, do you agree, Eppenhelm?
No, I mean, I didn't subject myself to this directly, so it's all a little theoretical, but I would assume the bombing platforms, if you hit the actual army, then they're going to burn the Broodlings, I think, to death, because the Broodlings sit there for like half a second before their AI kind of wakes up. So I do think on that front, it's like the bombing platforms kills, say, a pack of Marines, and then the Broodlings spawn and the napalm burns it. The problem is that's not particularly helpful, but I do think it's something. And the other top bars as well, again, I think their cooldowns are like ridiculously long for what they do, but you do have the space station and calling the fleet and mag mines, although mag mines also are going to get hurt by Broodlings, because if a couple slip through, then, buy all my mag mines. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't say P3 for bombing platforms, because you need to get them up and going. You can't, your ally's going to be doing enough work as it is. Again, I think E is good enough. Like it's kind of like, A is really good. E is really, really bad. So, it's not quite F, but it's very bad.
Yeah, so the rule here is if it's not unanimous, it's not F. If it's not unanimous, it's not S. So E tier, Hot and Horner goes. Moving on, Karax, where do we have him?
Not in F tier, quite the opposite, in fact. Karax has the luxury of being able to rely entirely on static defense and his top bar. I think there is probably an argument to be made for playing P1 this week and really buffing his static on the basis that once you've got the static down, you really don't need to do much else. Having said that, also very conscious that there are players out there who are very, very competent with the top bar and will simply rely on that, and that is also sort of absolutely fine. I think that for my money on this one, although you are able to make very effective use of the top bar, particularly once you get Solar Lance upgraded with its sort of Hound and Horner-esque napalm effect, until that point you are still going to be releasing trickles of Broodlings onto yourself. So my preference would probably be P1. However, he's very, very strong either way. Really doesn't encounter too many dramas. I've got him in S tier.
What do you think about S tier, Joe?
Yes, this is one I did subject myself to, and it was a pretty
good
easy
choice.
time. I would say that I think I could be crazy about this, but in my experience, Solar Lance a decent amount of the time would actually kill the unit, and then the next damage tick would occur, and it would kill the Broodlings as well that spawned even without the burn upgrade. So yes. I would say P3 is better because you do have that. In fact, I'm pretty sure the orbital bombardment or orbital strike was doing the same thing sometimes. I swear. It was actually killing the Broodlings in one go. Like it would kill the unit and then kill the Broodlings that spawned instantly as well. So for that reason, I would say P3 is probably better. I do think you could probably go P1 and be fine. Similar to what Johnny said with the Minsk stuff earlier, you ideally would have your cannons like all the way at the end of the push path and everything so that you can just deal with the Thrashers with that as well. But you can probably just get the Thrashers with some top bars or just push out and add a few cannons to deal with it whenever you need it, especially with like Purifier Beam as well. So you have options. He's very good. Had him an S.
All right. Unanimous S tier for Karax. Prestige-wise, first or third. Both are good. Moving on. Kerrigan. Where do we have him?
Kerrigan is mid this week. She can go Brood Lords in theory and utilize Omega Worms to kind of throw out the Broodlings ahead of time to draw in the Power Overwhelming. And Kerrigan herself does have a mobilization wave, which is something, but it's all a little fragile and it's all a little tenuous. And the early game sucks, a little bit because you're very much relying on Kerrigan. So if you get some bad Power Overwhelming RNG, yikes. That said, I don't think she's actively bad. So I had her in C tier.
C tier. That is certainly one way to describe mid. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I had her as pretty mid as well. I had her in B tier purely on the basis that I felt that playing her Broodlords plus Lurkers and potentially playing P1 in order to really maximize the effect of those Lurkers. Whilst I appreciate the requirement for a bit of mobility on this map, this is again where my assumption of kind of knowing where stuff is coming and when comes into play. If you are familiar enough with this map, the buff that Malignant Creep on P1 gives you, I think, is worth it, basically sacrificing that mobility. Having said that, if you don't want to do that, I do think that a lot of her other prestiges are pretty viable. I think there's probably an argument for P2 this week on the basis that it enables Kerrigan to do more of a crowd controlling job and then utilizing, the rest of your army to sort of deal like real damage from a distance. So I do think she's got a load of options this week, hence why I had her in B tier. with that being said, I don't think any of those options are, free by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm sort of very happy with C tier as well. I had a like roughly somewhere in the middle.
Okay, what do you know about heavy air? Exactly.
Yeah, that's a fair one.
Okay, so what? B or C?
I'm very happy with C on basically precisely that basis that she is pretty weak against heavy air.
All right. Prestige wise, you said second one?
I would say not second one, because by the time you build up your Fury stacks, you've been stunned and pulled all over the place, and
Black
then it gets
hold,
canceled before you can
fungold.
actually black hold. Like, it's going to be hard to actually get the Fury stacks up and then dash without it getting. It's the Bruce Lee quote, or I think it's Bruce Lee. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. I feel like that would be Kerrigan P2 this week. Really, it's like, I'm gonna dash and I'm dead. So yeah, I would say probably not P2 on that. Just because, I don't think that's going to happen very realistically.
I think again, like, if you want to, you can build up Fury stacks on your own Omega worms, but I completely see the point, and like the reality to it is, this is why I rated her a little bit higher actually, and probably not quite on tier list logic, is that I actually do think out of a lot of the commanders this week that she does have multiple prestiges that are pretty viable, but none of them are.
Yeah,
okay,
that's fair.
All right. So moving on, Nova. What do we have him?
The reality to it is she has a very expensive army, which is very difficult to replace, and therefore, with this mutation particularly, sort of with errors being punished so harshly on this mutation, I felt that she required some pretty delicate play. I think that you're going to want to play P1 in order to really enable good usage of like Shotgun Nova. She is going to be vulnerable in that state for all of the obvious reasons, but it's better than nothing. So, but yeah, I didn't rate her particularly highly this week, despite all of the defensive advantages she's got of, siege tanks, libs, all the standard stuff basically. So I had her somewhere between C and D tier.
What do you think about C or D, Edmund?
So I think she has actually some pretty solid options. They're not perfect, but her turrets are AoE, which is good against the Broodlings. Shotgun is AoE against the Broodlings as well. If you're against ground, Spider Mines are very, very good here, I think, in general. And the top bars are all pretty helpful this week as well. I had her in B tier. I don't think she's quite as bad as C or D tier, especially because you also have defensive drone, which can kind of just help those units tank when you get the unlucky draw of whatever power overwhelming throws at your units. You have that as a backup. And then the airstrike as well just kind of clears things quite effectively. And even if it leaves behind Broodlings, one shotgun blast and they're all gone, or some of those turrets. I do think you want to lean pretty heavily on turrets this week at the tops of the ramps and whatnot. But I could definitely see C tier as well. But yeah, I had her in B personally.
All right, since you're okay with C, let's where Nova goes. Prestige wise, first one?
Yeah, I think you could maybe go third, but I'd like to have the shotgun.
All right, one more thing I would like to add. I think the airlift can pull units out of black hole. I think if that's the case.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it can.
So you can help both yourself and your ally on one of the most annoying spells out there. Moving on. Raynor, where do we have him?
Raynor is like Minsk, but if he was terrible. So he does have bunkers. But that's about where the good stuff ends. I guess you do have spider mines as well.
He's like it's just, Arcturus, but this one specific thing. And he's worse in all the respects. He's even worse in that respect.
Yes. So he's pretty bad. I don't think I think he's very terrible this week. He has much longer startup time than Minsk does economically. His Marines are much worse than vampires. He doesn't even have ESOs. What a loser. And I think he's pretty bad here. So I had him in E tier.
What do you think about E tier, Joni?
Oh, I think E tier is quite harsh. I think even for a bad Minsk, he does have some tools at his disposal that enable him to deal with the mutators better than some. I think he massively benefits on this map. His ability to camp with spider mines, plus bunkers, plus siege tanks, plus, turrets if it's an air comp. He does have like a toolkit. I certainly think a better toolkit than any of the commanders we've got in D tier. I had him in C tier. Yeah, I don't think he's anywhere near as bad as like Han and Horner, for example, purely on the basis that he's got bunkers and they don't.
Well,
A C tier, I don't think. It's just the only, like, if your units are not, if it's air or if any of your units are outside of your bunkers, they're useless, basically. Like, there's no good units he has except units in the bunkers. Spider mine camping is technically a thing, but yeah, any air units throws a big wrench in that plan.
or
So
a hybrid.
I would say D tier.
Yeah.
Or a hybrid. All of the broodlings after the initial units with spider mines as well, which I guess you could just, hopefully those get cleaned up by the bunkers and you don't waste too many spider mines on them.
I don't think his siege tanks are utterly useless.
In theory, but that's a lot of money to be risking getting abducted.
Yeah.
Ha! But in 1v1, that no longer works. Ha ha ha!
That is true. That is true. Which is insane, but that's besides the point.
I do not play 1v1. That is nothing but a joke to me.
I'm in the same boat, but you know, got a grumpy Zerg player. No, whilst I don't think Raynor's E tier terrible, I do concede that he's also not great and is going to be pretty mechanically intensive to play, which, as we all know, is my weakness anyway. So I'm happy to put him in D tier.
Okay, moving on. Stat boy, where do we have him?
Stetmann is good. He has a super Gary and the ability to plonk Stetlites straight down lanes, meaning that you get like complete coverage of the whole map. Super Gary is so tanky, particularly with Stetlight overcharge on P2, that in reality to it, he's not going to be massively fussed by a lot of the stuff that is thrown at him through power overwhelming. Yes, there are going to be some irritations, black hole, etc. But the reality to it is his lings are also so good that there is going to be significant compensation, even if Super Gary gets sort of momentarily distracted by something happening. So I had Stetmann in S tier. Sort of I will grant that I had him on the cusp of S tier. I'm pretty good.
What do you think, Edmund?
Well, you heard it here first. If you play Stetmann this week, you could qualify for significant compensation. So, I think he's S tier as well. Actually, I think Stetmann's really good. Lings, I would probably say you want to get as many ultras as you can as well, because the Lings, while they are good, they're mainly good against like huge heavy damage, which isn't necessarily what you're running into this week. This week you're running into 12 different psionic orbs and a Psystorm and a fungal all at once. And that will punch through the Lings, even with the healing, because they only limit large damage, not tick damage. So definitely Ultralists, though, I think will be good, because they're relatively tanky. They have the ability to steal health and obviously green zone. So, and use Steadilite Overcharge well. But you have basically everything you need. You help your ally with healing. You have a great army. You have a great hero. You can recall as soon as you take care of one side of the map to another side of the map if you need to. And you can do it again after that. So even if it's 3 waves, you can handle it all. So he's very good. S tier.
S tier. All right. Second prestige. Moving on. Stukov, where do we have him?
Stukov is worse than that this week. I don't think it's a P3 week necessarily, because dealing with multiple lanes as P3 in particular can be tough. You could go P3. You will eventually weather the storms and the psionic orbs and all of that, but the time it takes kind of sucks. You could go P3, have some of those, and then supplement with like siege tanks or something like that. Or you could go P1 and just go like tanks with some liberators maybe and some diamondbacks. I'd question the diamondbacks a little more, and still some bunkers. I don't think he's terrible, but he's not as great as he tends to be. So I had him in B tier.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I had him in B tier as well. I did towards P3 as much as playing that prestige irks me. I find that actually this map sort of compensates by forcing you to actually like work to deploy troops correctly. So I sort of strayed towards the side of trying to achieve a critical mass which would eventually cut through stuff, and you just have to be a bit careful about sort of where you're directing stuff when, which does make it far from free this week, even with sort of P3. With all of that being said, I totally agree with ET. Supplementing with tanks being super valuable. I had him in B tier as well.
All right, B tier. Moving on. Oh wait, prestige-wise, third one, right?
Third or first?
Whatever. Yeah, I can totally see ET's point of playing first as well, despite having not tried it. So yeah, happy with either.
All right, Swann, where do we have him?
Swann, I also had in S tier. His static is basically just perfectly geared up to do the job that this mutator demands of you. Flaming Betties obviously just annihilate Broodlings completely. It is all static defense, and therefore it is not as affected by a lot of the stuff that Power Overwhelming throws at you. Yes, you're going to need to do some repairing, but it does also repair to 50%, which is at least better than nothing. And the reality to it is, as I say, sort of Flaming Betties make alien incubation like not a thing aside from all the stuff they're going to chuck at you beforehand. So I rated Swann very, very highly, and that's before even mentioning that stuff like Concentrated Beam will just take out an entire lane in a Wanna. My preference with Swann is always to play P0, purely because I like sort of late game flexibility. Having said that, probably an argument to be said for playing P2 this week.
What do you think, Epinham?
I'm not sure what flexibility P2 realistically costs you in the late game because turrets don't cost gas. So if you're like, oh, I need to swap into tanks, dang it, I only have 4,000 gas banked up and my units cost 30% more. It's like, it's probably fine.
No, it's that you're always sort of more mineral starved, I find. So yeah.
With P2?
No, with P0. But you will be more so with P2 as well.
No, they all cost more gas.
It doesn't cost any more minerals though, and they only cost more gas.
No,
P2.
but it's just I find that with Swann it's getting to the stage where you can transition. But no,
your mineral starved either way, then it doesn't affect things, right?
Yeah, that is a fair point actually. Yeah. I'll have to go back and
I'm out of minerals either
P2.
way. Yeah, I would say P2 in that case. I mean, because you don't want the only units like if you're making wraiths, which I wouldn't necessarily suggest here, the gas cost thing doesn't matter at all. If you're making tanks, it does matter, but tanks are going to be a little iffy on this mutation anyways. And that's true with basically any units that actually cost enough gas for it to matter. That said, make sure you spread out your turrets a lot with Swann. I do think he's worse than Karax. I had him in A, but I'm fine with S. The problem is that Karax's top bars are way more flexible, and his turrets insta-build really does make a big difference in being able to like add more turrets as needed.
Well, both of you are fine with S, so that's what we'll put him. Let's simplify this. Tychus, where do we have him?
Tychus, it's a bit of a difficult week for him. You tend to get shut down pretty heavy. I'd say you still want to go P2 because you have the 50% damage reduction. That's pretty nice. And the main healing benefits you'd get from like Nikara and whatnot don't help if she gets completely shut down like she probably will. So definitely P2. I don't think he's bad by any means. I had him in B tier, but you'd have to be a little careful with like medevac platforming them out of vortexes and things like that.
What do you think about B tier, Joni?
Yeah, I'm not against B tier at all. I had him a little bit higher than that purely because my feeling this week is that you can kind of lead primarily with Sirius and make full utilization of turrets basically to try to keep the actual commander himself, if not completely out of trouble, then at least supported by something else that does some shooting when he can't. But yeah, he's not without sort of bother of playing this week. So yeah, very, very happy with B tier, but certainly I would suggest playing P2 as well.
All right, second prestige. Vorazun, where do we have him?
I'm not convinced that Vorazun is going to have a great time this week. However, I think that she's not going to have as bad time as some, mainly because a significant portion of her army is cloaked, which does allow her to deal with a lot of stuff before power overwhelming becomes a thing intrinsically. The difficulty with that is that obviously sniping detectors, particularly if you're playing against a like Zerg comp or Terran with Ravens, etc., if they are airborne basically, then anti-detection sniping is going to be a really significant problem to the extent of pretty game breaking. She's got some tools, time stops obviously like brilliant as always, but I do think she's going to struggle, and the reality to it is her army is ultimately like melee based and pretty squishy. So yeah, I sort of don't have useful recommendations for Vorazun this week because I didn't come up with any like what I saw as sort of life altering strategies to play with her. I had her in D tier.
What do you think, Epinham?
I think I was worried he was going to like put her higher than that. By the way, he was talking at first, so I'm glad we're on the same page here. Yeah, I think she's D tier as well. Your main benefit is things like on the triple wave and whatnot, which is where things can get quite hairy. Is you can especially if you're on P3. Not that I'm recommending a prestige for D tier or anything, but you can like have your main army on, say, the main lane, and then call in the time stop at the top lane, clear both of those waves while everything's frozen, and then hopefully your ally can manage a wave that's completely frozen for 20 seconds in the other lane. So not too bad. That's basically her main help. That and like sniping thrashers, she'll be pretty good at if you're, in position before the attack waves get there on those last 2 thrashers. You could, like, in theory, kill 1 or 2. Beyond that, not very good. Had her in D tier.
All right, D tier. Moving on, Zagara. Where do we have him?
Zagara is awful. Generally speaking, her main strategies rely on Zerglings and Banelings, which you really kind of just don't want to do. I would say you want to go P3 or P2, probably P2, and just hopefully Corruptors and Aberrations can do some work, because, yeah, Zerglings and Banelings are just going to get, and Scourge are going to get annihilated by Power Overwhelming. Even with that, I mean, P2, it has its uses, but this is not really one of them. It's just less bad than P1, so I think she's pretty terrible. I had her in E tier.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, even bearing in mind the fact that P1 is absolutely a trap this week and should not be played in the slightest, I couldn't really come up with a manner in which she doesn't just run out of gas, basically. And sorry, I mean not Vespine gas, but just general sort of ability to do anything. She just inevitably loses more units than she's capable of dealing with over the course of the game. So I had a pretty bad, possibly worse than Han and Horner, because she doesn't have a top bar. Not that theirs is spectacularly decent, but like, you've got, for the sake of having mentioned it, bile launchers will actually do a lot of work this week if you position them correctly. And that is obviously at whatever choke points you decide that you want your lanes to have, in order to basically mop stuff up as and when it comes through, preferably taking like contact encounters with your armies inside like the sort of splash radius of the bile launchers, in order that broodlings and such are mopped up before they get the chance to actually really do anything. That is difficult. Still, she runs out of juice. And was kind of really unhappy playing her this week. Bunny.
Okay, wait. You said D tier, right, Eponum? Or did you say E?
No, I said E.
Oh, you said E. Okay. I misheard. But that's fine, because we're moving on. Zeratul, what do we have him?
Yeah, Zeratul is back to form here in terms of cannons being good. His monoliths do an awful lot of work in terms of crowd control this week as well, which is great. His early game is not totally free. Getting up to that critical mass of cannons, particularly if you end up playing against one of the sort of more like anti-armor comps, immortals, siege tanks, etc. He is going to have more problems this week. So I was on the cusp of sort of S and A. So I'll sort of pop it over to ET and see what he thinks.
What do you think, Eponum?
Yeah, I had him in A tier. He is quite good, but the cannons, you have to be using shade projections. If you run out, then them actually fighting your cannons is usually pretty bad. And if you can't get up to that critical mass, that hurts as well. Demote Dude is nerfed this week as well, because even the drones can cast spells. So, that's unfortunate as well. But that's not a huge deal, obviously. But yeah, he's very good, but I didn't quite have him in S.
All right, prestige-wise, second one.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Is there a double S?
No.
Oh, hold on. Now it's
look at
perfectly
that.
tiered. There we go. Yeah, it's perfectly evenly distributed. There we go. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Perfect.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. This is so perfect. Yeah, so beautiful.
Sure.
Karax
Yes.
top of S tier.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I'd personally put Stetmann above Swann.
All right,
I knew you would. Yeah,
A tier, top Zeratul, right? Has to be.
yes.
Yeah. I think Zeratul and then Minsk.
All right, B tier.
Probably Tychus, and then Stukov above Abathur.
All right.
Oh, I don't know about that. I would have Abathur higher, but I originally had Abathur in A tier, so I would. I'm happy with.
guess
I'm
that's
happy
fine.
enough with that. Yeah,
All right, Nova.
I'd put Kerrigan above Phoenix personally as well, but I'm not unhappy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's fine.
D tier.
Now, I personally would have Raynor at the top of D tier, but I don't think ET would.
He has bunker,
I would
so
have bottom of D
Yeah.
tier, but
now well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm fine with having
I-
it at the top. It's fine.
So Raynor at the top of D tier, and then I'd certainly have Artanis at the bottom.
Yeah, that's fine.
This?
Yeah,
And then,
Happy with that.
yeah, I guess Han and Horner may be better than Zagara. They both suck.
I think Zagara's like significantly
Vorazun is
worse.
definitely the best of the three.
Yeah, Vorazun's better than
The
Han
least
and Horner.
bad. Look at that
Least
beautiful tier list. It's so perfectly distributed.
Just swap Vorazun and Han and Horner.
Vorazun, Han, and Horner, like this.
Yeah.
If this real
go.
actual tier list doesn't get at least 1 million views, I'm rioting. Everyone's going in S tier next week if this doesn't get 1 million.
You heard it first. You heard it here first, guys. If you want to see everyone S tier next week, drop a dislike or something. I don't know. It's still engagement. I don't know. Just drop the like, dislike, or yeah, just click whatever. Type a comment, share. I don't know. Do I even want subscribers? I'm at 16K subscribers, but like 1,000 views a week. So like, that's not even 10%. I don't even want subscribers anymore. I just need viewers. Oh my Donnie.
Play the video on loop.
That would be amazing if you did that. Also let the ads play, so I can at least make 0 money on this instead of negative. Please give
Very
it a
true.
0. My Donnie.
Compile a list of do what those like silly music channels do and compile like a list of tier lists for people to go to sleep with.
I should do that so I can.
Yeah.
So I don't even need you guys anymore. I just have garbage on my channel. Like this isn't garbage anyway. Anyway. Oh my Donnie. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for it also, please leave it in a comment. Oh no, not yet. There are only 6 guys in S or A. Yeah, we need synergies. Do we have combinations of guys B and below who together will be better than Swann on his own?
Well, like definitely Tychus and Raynor probably, because yeah, Raynor can just bunker and then Tychus can push out.
I think pretty much anyone together.
Yeah, most any combo of 2. Yeah, like Stukov, Tychus. You know, Tychus holds until Stukov's fully set up, and then once Stukov's fully set up, it's going to be pretty easy breezy.
I don't
Even
know.
like,
I'd hate to see a Han and Horner Zagara combo. That would be brutal.
That's true.
That's true.
Anyone in like B with anyone else. would
I think even a
definitely
C.
be good enough. Maybe even C. Yeah. What's the
Mm.
worst combo that would still be better? Then is the question. You know, like
Yeah.
are there any D and E combos that would be better? Raynor and
Well,
someone
Zagara
would have to-
Artanis certainly.
Right.
That combo is surprisingly robust.
Yeah, Zagara,
I was going
Artanis,
to
I
say
think that
like
would be
Raynor
good.
and Alarak as well, actually.
Yeah, Raynor, Alarak, Raynor, maybe Raynor.
Raynor
like,
bunkers up, holds the
Vorazun.
first 9 minutes, and then once Alarak gets ascended, it's powered up. Yeah, that could work. That could work. Even Zagara Alarak.
That's just well. In fact, Zagara Raynor could be there's
So-
some rock solid defense going on there.
So anyone who's not a double E tier will do better than any 2 who's not double E tier would do better than Swann on his own.
Yeah, I think so. Because yeah, I mean, bio launchers are basically siege tanks that can't get abducted, right? So that's Raynor's replacement siege tanks. It's just
Yeah.
bio launchers,
How do
and
we
then she
buff
can make
Raynor?
corruptors to deal with the
Air
Road
hybrid.
Thrashers
Thrashers also, yeah. All right.
and air hybrid.
So now the second thing that we have to add is, what does Vorazun have to do to not be E tier?
She just needs
Have
like-
Shadow Fury shoot up, so you can mass
Yeah,
Dark Templar, nothing else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah, that'll probably
the
do it.
air side. Just it doesn't even consistently let her down against air comps. It just consistently lets her down against everything.
Yep.
So we're saying, yeah, just let the Shadow Fury shoot up, and it solves everything, right? Oh, also
Yeah, I think
make
that would probably do it.
It would solve a lot. Yeah.
make Dark Pylons detectors, and their detection radius is the same as their cloaking radius.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, because Oracles suck as detection.
Oracle piece that. Yeah.
Han and Horner, how do we make her not E tier?
They need static of some sort.
Add-
they've
better.
got
Add
Yeah,
eminent
for it.
domain.
Yeah. Bombing platforms hitting air would help, but I don't think that would. Well, that would probably get her out of E.
Oh wait, make bombing platforms cost 50-50 rather than 100-100.
Yeah, and then P3 would be viable finally.
Yeah, have the cost.
yeah. P3 is a very peculiar prestige at the minute.
Actually, I think that's a good general buff to Han and Horner. Make their air strikers cost half. So for non-third prestige, 50-50. For third prestige, 100-100. Oh, that'll make her incredible, actually. A real co-op commander. So,
Or just change the debuff to P3, like, you just don't get the starport or something,
yeah, no
Yeah,
starport even.
it's
Yeah.
It's P3 not being particularly useful at the minute because it doesn't serve its purpose, which is meant to be replacing army with bombing platforms.
Exactly.
And you can't do that. So
100% agree. Zagara. Well, we know what to do. Just make the bio launchers auto shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, give the auto attack, and the problem fixed. All right. That's it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for it, also, can you please leave it in a comment. I will see you guys next time.